Thanks for joining us on the Week in Review on this steamy Friday. I'm Paris Schutz. Blackhawks chairman Rocky Wirtz credited for turning around the organization, dead at 70 years old. Hockey fans mourn the loss of the team owner who won 3 Stanley Cups but was there when a sexual abuse scandal rocked the organization. More lawsuits hitting Northwestern and its alleged culture of hazing and racism in athletics, including now on the women's volleyball team.
We got folks that have been kicked out the shelter that y'all have no plan on.
City council members demand answers as makeshift migrant shelters are met with resistance at every turn.
It shows and demonstrates yet again our commitment to the labor movement.
City unions agree to labor peace so Chicago can put its best foot forward for the 2024 Democratic National Convention. And don't look now, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Bears CEO Kevin Warren meet again, this time to talk about stadium sites in the city, and they vow to continue the discussion. Anything's possible. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Rick Tellender of the Chicago Sun-Times, Sarah Schulte of ABC7 Chicago, Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune, and Craig Dellamore of WBBM News Radio. We hope you at home are someplace cool and hydrated right now. We are nice and cool in this studio tonight. Rick Tellender, Rocky Wirtz, dead at 70 years old. Do we know any more about the circumstances? Because this just kind of seemed to happen all of a sudden.
I don't know anymore. I know people are curious. It's funny, he was 70. I guess, you know, you can die at 70, but it was shocking. That was my first feeling, that I couldn't believe it. I just thought he would go on, you know, for quite a while and leave quite a legacy. But I think, however it happened, I don't know if he'd been sick, it was sudden, I just don't know. But a lot of thoughts went through my mind after it happened, and first and foremost was him taking over for his dad, Bill Wirtz, and winning 3 Stanley Cups. And I don't think we'll soon forget that.
There's no doubt, and no one knows the Blackhawks story better than you. Rick Pearson, a lifelong fan. He took over a moribund franchise from his dad, reinvigorated it, turned it into a model franchise, wins 3 Stanley Cups. Is this gleaming legacy somewhat marred by what happened with Kyle Beach and sexual abuse on his watch?
I think it is. And I think, you know, for all of the great things that he did and really modernized this team that had been stuck into 1950s and made it a model franchise for all of sports.
They didn't show their home games on TV under Bill Wirtz.
Until his father died.
Right.
And that was the first move that he made. Now, it doesn't take rocket science to do that, but it reflects the attitude of where the team and how the team had been run for so long. But going back to, I do think it's a bit clouded because of the fact of that press conference and the town hall and his reaction to it. Rocky very much did not want to be his father, and he was shunned by his father in many respects. And in that press conference, it looked like he was his father.
Well, we should
and of course he apologized.
That's when a reporter asked him about the sexual abuse scandal, and he got pretty upset at the question.
Right. I mean, he obviously was tone deaf during that press conference. But, you know, I think the bottom line is, I think people, when they think of Rocky Wirtz, they're going to remember of how quickly he turned around that team, and they're going to remember the Stanley Cups. Well, I know this isn't recent history, but I think overall, I think people are going to remember Rocky Wirtz as the person that, you know, kind of put the Blackhawks back up on the map.
Well, and made them a team again.
Right.
I mean, frankly, he helped bring me back to the Blackhawks because I had just gone away from them for so long. And with having worked at WGN and their connection and everything, I got to know him a little bit, tell stories about the old Chicago Stadium days, all the players that I watched growing up in the old stadium. And he connected them and made them really part of the history and the branding.
It should be mentioned, though, he was a big figure in the civic life of Chicago, too. Craig Dellamore, he opened that ice rink on the west side. There were so many press conferences, I remember, with Rahm Emanuel or Mayor Lightfoot and Rocky Wirtz, right at the center of what was happening in Chicago.
Yeah, and I think, he made sure that the Blackhawks were thought of as a team that was connected to the community. I'm not a hockey fan, but I do remember him as a figure who had energy, who was always out there cheering on, and if there was something happening in the community, he would show up. Even there, bringing in kids to the training center, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think we all know him.
Yeah, a civic leader here, and our condolences to the whole Wirtz family on this tragic loss. Meanwhile, Rick Tellender, the lawsuits keep coming at your alma mater, Northwestern. How many are we up to now?
I don't know, was it 5? I mean,
Well, I think it might be more than that.
well, they
I think
keep
it was one today. I know that.
Yeah, there was one today.
Okay, well, I missed that one. I mean,
One a day.
I figure it's going to reach critical mass sooner or later because don't forget, on the one side you have the lawsuits for the players, the other side you've got Pat Fitzgerald, and he's got Dan Webb, and Dan Webb was not a guy that you hire with, to work on a traffic ticket for you. This is a big shot guy. This guy that did the Jussie Smollett investigation. Well, you guys, everybody here knows everything he's done. So that's for $40 million. That in back pay or whatever, severance.
Although they haven't sued the school yet.
Well, everything's in abeyance. I don't know who ultimately is going to pay what they actually want. You heard Ben Crump say they want to follow this through. This is not about settling for money. This is to expose, hazing issues. So I really don't know where it's going to go. And the funny thing is, school is out. There's nothing going on. So it's hard to put your finger on where this actually is occurring.
Does this move beyond, though, have the risk of going beyond just exposing the hazing issues and turning into a media spectacle where everybody's trying to pick at the carcass here and get money out of what happened to Northwestern?
I don't know. I mean, if this is what really happened to these people, and they're looking at it as finally, getting some type of redemption, then, I don't know.
Absolutely, and I'm acknowledging all the kind of graphic kind of things that are alleged here, and these are very graphic.
I think that the door is open, and I think they're probably going to see a lot more lawsuits.
I'd just like to know, where is the athletic director? I mean, it's been crickets, and this is the athletic director's issue. I mean, all of this is under their purview.
And here he is doing an interview with the Big Ten Network.
Derek
but
Craig.
how long does he keep his job? How far does this go until more?
Who's going to be the fall guy?
heads
Some bodies have got to be thrown over the castle wall to appease people. That's what always happens. It has to happen. Could be him. Could be Michael Schill, the president. Remember, this started without leadership because they had Morty Shapiro was retiring 2 years ago, and they had this woman, Rebecca Blank. Yeah, the former president, Rebecca Blank from Wisconsin, to come in. She died before she could take office. Died very suddenly. So they get Michael Schill from Oregon. It's like, we need a president. And the same kind of true with the athletic department, what they went through. When Jim Phillips left abruptly, and they had a guy in for 9 days, and then they kicked him out because he was tainted by some of these allegations with the cheerleaders not listening to their complaints. And then they get Craig from Tulsa, and it's like, this all happened. I think he's blindsided. I think he's clueless.
Seems like there's no playbook to deal with this, and they don't know how to handle this. Let's move on to some of the issues with migrants. This week, Craig Dellamore. There's a very contentious city council committee meeting where alder people were bringing up instances of migrants doing drugs. Someone brought up an instance of alleged sex trafficking. How widespread are these kinds of issues right now with the migrant situation?
I'm not sure that it's everywhere, and frankly, I think the headlines made it seem as if all of the complaints were about things the migrants were doing, and in fact, during the hearing, a number of the points were being made that in some cases they were being victimized, that there were people coming to sell them drugs, there were people, that the trafficking might have been upon them. So yes, there was talk about them partying and that staying outside of the police stations where they were. But the real issue has been whether or not the community is brought in on the decision, most of the complaints, and what you heard Jeanette Taylor, the alderwoman from the 20th, talking about has been keeping them in the loop. Well, that's still the big complaint. And, and the city is basically saying, well, we're going to be different. We're going to do things better.
And there were some representatives from Brandon Johnson administration. They're answering these questions. So what was their response to this?
OAMC. I think that the bottom line is for the city is this is a crisis that keeps getting worse, and they really can't keep up with it. Mm-hmm. They are doing what they can. It's very difficult to find shelters because you have to find buildings that are up to code.
And every community seems to have some kind of pushback.
Right, and then they also get pushback. I think, and there are, I think, what did they say? They said there are a total of 68 buses of about 50 migrants that have come since January.
And 60 of them since he took office.
Johnson has taken office. So, and a lot of the aldermen are sounding the alarm. towards the Democratic convention. The one thing that blew me away of that hearing the other day was the fact that OAMC admitted that they had not had one conversation about the migrants with the DNC. They've talked about other issues, logistical issues that fall under the OAMC, but nothing about migrants. And so, you know, a lot of the aldermen are concerned that this is not going to go away. More and more will keep coming as we get closer to the DNC.
Well, and speaking of that too, I mean, you look at Kamala Harris, who's been here twice in the last 2 weeks or so. She's supposed to be in charge of she's the border czar. She's coming to Chicago, talking about Bidenomics, all these other issues too.
And she spoke to a Hispanic group in
And
Chicago.
spoke, and yes, and Unidas US, the largest Hispanic group at their convention, no word mentioned about this at all. And that's where Chicago is looking for, is give us some help.
Well, and the help they're really looking for is some type of executive order from President Biden to expedite work permits. I mean, they feel like at this point that is the only answer, because the longer that these migrants are at these shelters or police stations not doing anything, you know, the more they're going to be susceptible to bad things.
And it does seem like there are jobs there to be had.
There's like thousands in the hotel industry alone.
Last night there was a rally outside of the Broadway Armory in Edgewater where that's going to be set up as a migrant shelter. Let's hear from an activist who was against turning that into a shelter.
The process here has been a disaster, that the community has been excluded, that we have waited patiently for a conversation with the administration when we heard that this facility might be used as a shelter and all programs closed down.
So Craig Dellimore, this is the kind of pushback we've heard in seemingly every neighborhood. There's still just under 1,000 migrants at police stations. How do you solve this, given the pushback that seems to come everywhere they propose?
You solve it. Well, I'm not sure you can solve it the way things are going when you're getting, you know, almost a bus a day arriving here. You can't keep up, but they are trying to find more places. But then what happens when you find a possible place? You get the protesters, and you're going to get that. So I'm not sure there's an easy solution. You have to bring the neighborhood in. Even Jeanette Taylor is saying, I understand that we have to do our part. What she's saying is the whole city has to be in on this, that it shouldn't be just the African American and Latino neighborhoods accepting people. It has to be everywhere.
Well, and just to point out, I mean, Brendan Riley was also there, you know,
And
doing his share of complaining, and he has the largest. I mean, in his ward, in the 42nd ward in Streeterville, there are 1,400 migrants at the Inn of Chicago. There's also migrants at the Standard Club, and I mean, there are. I mean, and again, what he always saying, look, there's a lot of people there that are playing by the rules, but there are a small number of bad apples that are kind of ruining it for everybody else. And they're also complaining there's just not enough security. I mean, what is the city doing about security within these? And it's private security.
Well, and I think too with the Broadway Armory issue is it was displacing services
Yes.
for seniors and youth.
For the neighborhood.
And so, I mean, that brings in a whole new aspect to it. Rather
It
than
doesn't seem like nobody was prepared for this. I don't think anybody in the country is prepared for it. People don't hate immigrants. It's just like, what do we do? And a lot of this was courtesy of Governor Abbott, right, from Texas. Just keep sending them up. No plan here at all.
No plan, but Mayor Lightfoot did have months to come up with some type of plan and did not. So, you know, the Johnson administration has to work fast. The problem is they just can't keep up.
But it's the same complaints with the Johnson administration, that they're not letting people in on the process, just like they complained that Lightfoot wasn't letting people in on the process.
The deputy mayor of, what is it now, Immigrant, Migrant, and Refugee Rights, I mean, she basically told me the problem is they're coming in so fast and they don't have a lot, they don't really have time. You know, they have like one community meeting and they got to get these people into this place. And there's just not enough time for the whole process.
It's a very difficult situation. And Rick, you brought up the 2024 Democratic National Convention. There was some news on that this week where dozens of labor unions signed this peace agreement that there would be no labor action before or around the 2024 DNC, so Chicago can put its best foot forward. Is this like a ceremonial thing, or is this some kind of like official declaration of peace?
I think it was no surprise. Obviously, if it's the Democratic Convention pro-union, that's just kind of a pro forma setting the stage. It was another chance to do a rah-rah rally about the Democratic Convention coming to Chicago. And yes, I mean, it has a practical effect of not having any kind of strike or any kind of interruption of work being done at the facility. But beyond that, it's just kind of pro forma.
There's other concerns, as you mentioned, migrants, violence. But then Pritzker acknowledged the money that it's going to cost to put this on. It's going to be the most expensive convention ever run. Is the city going to raise enough money to break even?
Well, I don't know, but I know that I did interview Mike Quigley this week, and he is working on a bill to, I guess, get another $25 million out of the federal government. But they're also trying to get another
for migrants or for the
no,
convention?
for the convention. But they're also trying to get another $25 million for the Republican convention in Milwaukee.
Yes,
so
it's 50 million. It's 50 million is what's been allotted, and they're trying to get that to 75
Haven't they
million
always been
for each.
privately funded
No,
by
no, no.
political
There's
donors?
always been
something.
a federal, and part of it too is you have the security operations too. That I mean, these are designated as special security events.
Right.
But
And
then
the
which is what the money would be for,
corporations
correct?
are going to raise a large amount of the money, and even the governor has kind of, acknowledged that he could, pull out his wallet and bankroll the whole thing.
Well, if he's the insurance policy,
Yeah,
isn't he?
that's what he has said.
I'm sure they don't want to go that route.
No, and he doesn't want to go that route either. But I don't think the
he needs
money's
some for
going
his
to be.
presidential campaign. He's got to save some for that.
I don't think the money is going to
He's
be the
worth
problem.
$3 billion.
You know, it strikes me, I'm old enough, the old boy here, to remember the '68 Democratic Convention. Wasn't a good moment for Chicago. My whole hope is Chicago comes out of this looking great.
Well, 96 was a
yeah.
better
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah,
96
Yes,
was
it
a
was.
good moment.
68, good boy. I mean, have we ever had this contentious elements in politics like today? I mean,
But we'll be getting 2 buses of migrants a day from Texas
Right, we will.
during the convention.
Well, and some might say there was a lot of ugliness in 96 with everyone doing the Macarena. That was the
there
last
was
thing.
that.
but that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah.
That was the end of my going to my high school reunion when they played that song. I said, I'm out of here. And it was the weekend after the convention.
It's amazing how
Boom.
quickly that song disappeared. I want to bring up one more city issue this week. Sarah Schulte, there seems to be some momentum on an initiative of Mayor Johnson, and that's a surcharge on real estate transactions over $1 million. Is it going anywhere?
Well, I think it is. I mean, the progressives in city council are, first of all, they had a hearing, which is more they got out of the Lightfoot administration. What they're hoping is, they don't think there's going to be any action in Springfield, so the other option is to get it on the ballot in Chicago, and they're hoping to get it on the ballot in March. I think they have a lot of support for it. And I asked Pritzker about it today, who has been on the record, correct me, saying he's against the real estate transfer tax, but today he kind of dialed back a little and said that he actually is waiting to see how it ends up and that he may support a proportion of it or a
Well,
form
he's
of
been
it.
adamantly opposed to the idea of a financial transaction tax, too.
Yes,
so
well,
he's
that-
leaving some more wiggle room.
This is still something that he has said he wouldn't support. The difference is what kind of a real estate transfer tax. What is proposed in the Bring Chicago Home is a flat tax, so that if you go over the threshold of $1 million, instantly you are taxed for everything.
The entire amount.
Yes, and which means you're going to have a lot of places that are sold for $999,000. Well, the idea is maybe make it what is called a marginal tax, where once you go over the $1 million, you're only charged for what's over $1 million. And
At a higher percentage, too.
The higher
yes,
rate.
it is a higher rate.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that actually is something that might be more compatible with what could pass and what could get some support for businesses.
But you are talking tripling. I mean, even if when you go over that, and even if it is moderate, you're still talking tripling the real estate transfer tax. And that's a lot.
I did a little calculating of it. I think I was right. If you paid you had a house was sold for $999,000, you paid nothing, but it went for like $1.4 million. All of a sudden, you're paying $8,000 to $12,000 in tax.
But now,
transfer
what if you took out that $1 million? You're only paying the 0.4. You're only paying on taxes
So
on the
graduated
floor.
tax, kind of like
Kind
the
of
It's like a
income tax.
graduated
Right.
tax, yeah, with a floor.
So I think the governor is open to that.
So we'll have to see where that goes. I
Yeah,
wanna-
and so was a member, Lori Lightfoot's own housing commissioner,
Right.
was saying we are considering that.
This is
was
Marisa
on-
Novara,
Marisa-
who's just about to step down or just has stepped down.
And they were even talking about the research that they had about how this could go
So
over.
how come it didn't go anywhere in the Lightfoot administration?
Well, see, that's the interesting thing. I don't think they were only doing this research in the last 3 months. This means that Lori Lightfoot may have had this information, and I'm wondering why this plan didn't come up any earlier.
All right, I have to get to some national news, although folks will be able to hear more about this on Washington Week. But Trump is charged with superseding indictments here in this Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, including allegations he ordered the scrubbing of video. Now there's speculation that an indictment related to January 6th is imminent. Rick, when do you think we're going to see that?
I don't know that we're going to see it anytime soon because of the fact that we now have this new superseding indictment, which means that the investigation is still continuing by Jack Smith. I mean, yes, we've been talking for 2 weeks that the January 6th indictment of Trump was going to be imminent. Even today I'm reading, it's imminent. I think as long as they're still doing these investigations and turning over more details, I mean, the fact of an instruction from the boss to scrub the videotape.
Right, this is what's alleged.
This is what's alleged. I mean, the investigation is still going full steam ahead.
These are pretty stark details here, but Sarah Schulte, is there any doubt that among his most fervent supporters, it's just going to make them want to vote for him more and make it seem like he's the victim of some kind of political witch hunt?
Yeah, that's what they've all been saying. I mean, he still has a lot of support. I mean, I was in upstate New York this past weekend, and there they were, a lot of Trump flags flying.
Well,
absolutely. I mean, that's what he keeps. What the Trump believers are going to say exactly what he's telling them, that it's a witch hunt.
And he's got a lot of megaphones in.
I mean, he is losing a little bit of support.
In right-wing media that will echo the same exact thing. But we should go to the other side to talk about President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, had a plea deal now that went away. Rick, does that mean they might negotiate a new one? That there's going to be new terms?
That's the work that seems to be going on, is they're trying to restructure a new plea deal, and of course one of the issues being a weapons charge and whether that should be a jailable offense. That's something that the Republicans have really jumped on, but it seems like the judge had some questions and the prosecution is working to try to get those questions answered.
All right, I got to get to a few sports items that are fun sports items, not the serious sports items. Rick Tellender, although not a lot of fun for White Sox fans this year. Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito traded away. What did they get in return, and how big is this rebuild going to be?
I don't know. I just saw the two pitchers, Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly suddenly are gone, and it reminded me of the. Huh?
5 pitchers.
Yeah, 5. I mean, those are the two. They might be doing some.
Do you need to get over there for the bullpen
It's
tonight?
like Northwestern. It's happening. Okay, so if they have a team left, it'll be AAA. But it reminds me of an old saying that when you watch pro sports, you're rooting for laundry. You're rooting for the White Sox. Who's ever in that uniform, half their team will be gone, and they're rebuilding. This was a team that was supposed to be ready to go. I have no idea what has gone wrong or what went right.
I mean, the last couple of years were these supposed to be the
This
years.
is it, man.
And I mean, God bless Ozzie Guillen when he said, even the parking lot guy's got to go. I mean, this is because I'm watching the Cubs. I'm watching the Cubs are losing 7-2 in the 5th inning, and I'm going, just wait. Sox bullpen will come in. 10-7.
Right.
They've lost in some of the most astounding ways, almost as if it were by design. I don't know. I'm sorry, Paris. I surrender.
Do you know something we don't know, Rick? Is there something you want to break?
It's all a marketing thing.
You want to break the scoop on the show? On the other side of town, the Cubs are red hot. They had that great inning against the White Sox. They've won something like 6 in a row.
Up to 500, right?
They're up to 500. Does that solidify their position as buyers and not sellers at the trade deadline?
Well, you'd hope so, but being 500, it's in the middle, right? If you buy or you sell, you can't blame them, but they've been ascending as opposed to the White Sox. So this would seem to be the time we can do it. We're not that far out. We can get everybody all, one of the cliches, we're all rowing together, whatever managers use.
Well, I mean, at this point, you're 4.5, 5.5 games out of wild card or even first place, and I don't see how you can throw in the towel.
Well, you don't. Do the Ricketts?
Yeah.
I don't have their money.
Yeah.
You don't have the direct line to the Ricketts. All right, finally, and this was always a pet peeve of Joel Wiseman, but the Bears training camp just started, and all of a sudden I see all these positive stories about how Justin Fields and new receiver DJ Moore are going to be electric because he completed a couple passes in a practice. Why do we write so much about what happens in practice?
The Bears are undefeated. Come on, you know, I mean, this is what we do. Every team around the country, right? 32 teams are doing the same thing. There's like 10 reporters at every paper going and writing about training camp.
All
those quarterbacks, the young quarterbacks, you know, Bryce Young, these guys are all over the place. And as long as one of your players doesn't get carted off injured before the season starts, so it's what you dread. But everybody's positive.
All right, well, I'm positive too.
Come on.
I've been very positive tonight because this has been a great panel, but we are out of time. So our thanks to Rick Tellender, Sarah Schulte, Rick Pearson, and Craig Dellamore. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And now for the Week in Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay hydrated, stay cool out there, and see you at 10 tonight for Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. No, I want to see Justin Fields and DJ Moore do great things, but when they come...
Okay, so we're just talking about the Cubs are 500, okay? We got the Sox are miserable. Yeah, let's move ahead.
Right. Come on. Because the Cubs aren't going to go anywhere anyway.
Well, we hope, but you can't. It's the Cubs. So
I forgot. I got to bring up the meeting between Kevin Warren and Mayor Johnson. So is this heating up here that the Bears might stay in Chicago?
I wouldn't say heating up. I think it's exactly where it was the last time they met, which is that it's a possibility, but the Bears are going to make whatever deal.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.